The rain fell hard against the city, turning the streets into rivers of reflection. Lightning flashed, painting the skyline in brief bursts of white. Inside a glass-walled mansion that towered above the poorer blocks, billionaire Ethan Crow raised his voice again. To the world, he was a man of power and generosity, a tech visionary who built charities and smiled for cameras. But behind those perfect doors, another truth lived, one filled with rage, fear, and a woman's broken spirit. That night, his pregnant wife Amara was 7 months along, her hands trembling as she tried to shield her stomach. "Please, Ethan," she begged, voice shaking. Not the baby. But his anger had already swallowed reason. A crash of thunder drowned her sobs as glass shattered across the marble floor. Across the street, in a narrow, dimly lit apartment, a 12-year-old girl named Zuri Daniels sat by her window, hugging a worn-out teddy bear. Her grandmother, Miss Thelma, was dozing on the couch, the TV still flickering with the evening news. Zuri's life was quiet but hard, her mother gone too soon, her father unknown. She had learned to find beauty in small things, rain tapping the roof, the sound of her grandma humming gospel songs. But that night, beauty vanished. Through the rain, she heard it, a sound so sharp and haunting it froze her blood. A scream. A woman's cry for help, muffled, desperate, and close. Zuri ran to the window and pressed her forehead to the cold glass. Her building faced the back of the Crow mansion, all lights on, a shadow moving violently across the floor. Her heart pounded. "Grandma," she whispered, "someone's in trouble." Miss Thelma stirred awake, squinting. "What trouble, baby?" "I heard someone scream," Zuri said, eyes wide. "From over there, in the big house." Her grandmother sighed, shaking her head. "That's rich folks' business. You don't mix in that, you hear me?" But Zuri couldn't look away. Even through the storm, she could see movement, a woman stumbling, clutching her belly, a tall man's arm swinging. The scene vanished when the blinds snapped shut. Silence followed, except for the rain. Zuri felt her stomach twist. Later that night, when the lights in the mansion went dark, Zuri still couldn't sleep. She lay awake, listening, every sound magnified, the dripping sink, the ticking clock, the faraway hum of the city. That cry replayed in her head again and again. By morning, the storm had passed. Sunlight touched the broken city like nothing had happened. Miss Thelma made breakfast, humming softly, but Zuri was quiet. She carried her backpack to school and walked past the mansion. The iron gates glistened from the rain. Then she saw her. Behind the tinted window of a black SUV parked in the driveway sat Amara Crow. Her face was pale, her eyes red and swollen. For a moment, she looked right at Zuri. Time froze. Zuri felt her breath catch. In those eyes was a silent plea, a fear that words couldn't describe. Before Zuri could move, the car door slammed, and the SUV rolled away. All day at school, she couldn't focus. She doodled in her notebook, replaying the scream, the look, the silence. Everyone else laughed at lunch, but Zuri sat still, knowing deep inside that something terrible was happening right across her street. That night, she stood again at her window, watching the lights of the mansion flicker. She whispered into the rain, "I know you're in there." And though she was just a small girl in a broken neighborhood, something in her heart, a spark of courage, faint but fierce, whispered back, "Do something, Zuri. Don't look away." It was the night a frightened girl began to turn into a hero. The next morning dawned gray and heavy, as if the storm hadn't fully passed. Zuri walked to school with her backpack slung low and her eyes distant. The world went on as usual, buses honking, vendors shouting, children laughing, but inside her, everything felt strange and heavy. That scream from last night still echoed in her head like a ghost that refused to rest. She couldn't forget the look on the woman's face, the fear, the silent cry for help. It wasn't just pity she felt, it was a pull, something deep and powerful that told her she couldn't pretend it hadn't happened. When school ended, Zuri took the long way home. Her shoes splashed through puddles as she walked past the Crow mansion, pretending to tie her laces near the gate. The black iron bars gleamed, tall and cold. She looked for any sign of life, a maid, a car, a shadow behind the curtains, but the house was silent, almost too perfect. Just as she turned to leave, something caught her eye, a small piece of paper tucked beneath the fence, fluttering slightly in the wind. Her heart raced. She knelt down, glancing around before pulling it free. It was damp from the rain, the ink smudged, but the message was clear enough to freeze her breath. Help me. He'll kill me if I run. Zuri stared at the note, her hands trembling. It was written in shaky handwriting, the letters uneven and desperate. There was no name, but she didn't need one. She knew exactly who wrote it, Amara. Her throat tightened. She wanted to run straight to someone, the police, a neighbor, anyone, but a small voice inside her whispered, "Who will believe you?" She was just a little girl from the wrong side of town. Ethan Crow was a billionaire, charming, powerful, loved by everyone. He donated to schools, sponsored children's hospitals, smiled for every photo op. No one would believe that behind that perfect image lived a monster. Still, she couldn't stay silent. She folded the note carefully, slipped it into her backpack, and hurried home. That night, Zuri sat on her bed with her old notebook open. It was where she usually wrote poems or sketches, but tonight, it became something different, her truth journal. She wrote down everything she had seen and heard, the scream, the broken glass, the note under the fence, the look on Amara's face. She even drew a map of the mansion, marking where she thought the sound came from. It was her way of keeping the truth safe, in case no one ever believed her. When her grandmother, Miss Thelma, peeked into the room, Zuri quickly closed the notebook. "What you writing, baby?" she asked softly. "Just stories," Zuri replied. Miss Thelma smiled, her eyes tired. "You always got that imagination running wild. You be careful now." Zuri nodded, but her heart was beating too fast to sleep. Later that evening, the news came on the TV in the living room. Ethan Crow's face filled the screen, smiling, shaking hands with city officials at a charity event. The reporter called him a man of compassion, a hero to families in need. Zuri's stomach turned. She looked at the TV and whispered, "You're lying." Something inside her shifted, a quiet but fierce resolve. She didn't know how yet, but she would find a way to help Amara. Outside, thunder rumbled again, distant but deep, like the city itself was warning her of what was coming. Zuri didn't care. She looked out her window at the mansion's dark silhouette and said under her breath, "I won't let him hurt her again." The little black girl had made a silent promise, one that would soon shake the world of a man who thought no one could ever stand against him. For 3 days, Zuri kept the note hidden in her backpack, tucked between her math book and her lunchbox. Every time she opened it, the words burned through her, "Help me. He'll kill me if I run." She read it again and again, wondering how long Amara had been living in fear while the world praised her husband. At school, Zuri couldn't focus. Her teachers scolded her for daydreaming, but she wasn't dreaming, she was planning. She knew Amara didn't have much time. Every hour that passed felt like a countdown she couldn't stop. That afternoon, when the final bell rang, Zuri made up her mind. She would go to the police. The small precinct on 14th Street smelled like coffee and rain. 2 officers sat behind the counter, laughing over something on a phone screen. Zuri clutched the note in her small hand and approached them nervously. "Excuse me, sir," she said softly. "I think someone's in danger. A lady across the street, she's pregnant, and her husband hurts her. She gave me this note." The older officer glanced at her, his smile fading into amusement. "What lady?" "The woman in the big mansion, Mr. Ethan Crow's wife," Zuri said. "She needs help." At that name, both men exchanged a look. One of them leaned back and sighed. "You mean the Ethan Crow? The billionaire? Kid, that man builds hospitals. You sure you didn't see something on TV?" "I saw her. I heard her scream." Zuri insisted. "Please, she—" All right, the younger officer interrupted. "Go home, little one. Maybe you misunderstood. We can't just go accusing important people like that." Zuri stood frozen, her throat tight. They didn't even look at the note. They didn't believe her, not even enough to check. She left the station fighting tears. The sky had turned dark again, clouds rolling in like bruises. She walked aimlessly until she found herself in front of the newspaper office downtown, the City Chronicle. Through the window, she saw tired people typing on computers, walls lined with photos of protests, crimes, and scandals. Maybe, she thought, someone here will listen.
Zuri walked inside, clutching the note like a weapon. The receptionist looked up, surprised. "Can I help you?" "I need to talk to a reporter. It's important. Someone's gonna die if nobody helps." The receptionist blinked, uncertain, but before she could respond, a man stepped out from a nearby office, a tall, tired-looking journalist with a coffee stain on his shirt and years of disappointment in his eyes. His name was Marcus Hale. "What's going on?" he asked. Zuri turned toward him. "You write about the truth, right?" Marcus frowned. "That's the idea." She held out the note. "Then write about this." He took it, read the shaky handwriting, and looked at her again. "Where did you get this?" Zuri told him everything, the scream, the bruised woman, the note under the fence, and the police who didn't care. Marcus didn't interrupt once. When she finished, his expression was unreadable. Then he nodded slowly. "All right," he said quietly. "I believe you." Zuri blinked in shock. "You do?" "I've been hearing rumors about Crow for years," he said. "But no one ever had proof. Maybe now we do." He promised to investigate and told her to go straight home, and not tell anyone else. But that night, after Marcus began digging into hospital records, the story leaked. Zuri's name spread on social media. Ethan Crow's man didn't waste time. Windows shattered in her neighborhood. Someone spray-painted Lyra on her building's wall. Miss Thelma cried as she swept up the glass, begging Zuri to stop. But Zuri only shook her head, her voice trembling yet fierce. "If I stop," she whispered, "she dies." Outside, sirens wailed in the distance, but for the first time, Zuri didn't flinch. Fear was still there, but so was fire. And for the first time in her life, she realized courage wasn't the absence of fear. It was doing what your heart demanded, even when no one believed you. After the vandalism and the threats, the city felt smaller and meaner. Zuri moved like someone carrying a secret too heavy for her shoulders. Marcus Hale kept his promise. Quietly, stubbornly, he pulled together the fragments no one else would touch: hospital intake forms filed under false names, a pattern of emergency room visits that matched Amara's bruises, security footage from a delivery entrance that showed a woman slipping out at dawn. It wasn't everything, but it was enough to breathe hope into Zuri's panic. "We can't wait for a warrant," Marcus said one night over stale coffee in his cramped office. "If they find out we've been poking, they'll bury the paper trail. We get Amara out tonight, while Ethan is in Chicago at that fundraiser." His voice was low, urgent. Zuri nodded. Miss Thelma's face hovered in her mind, the way her grandmother had smoothed Zuri's hair and told her to be careful, and Zuri felt courage like an armor she hadn't earned but would not take off. They needed eyes inside the house. That's where Lena, a weary maid with kind eyes and a habit of humming under her breath, became their secret ally. Lena had worked for the Crows for years. She had seen the bruises. She had whispered to Amara about leaving, but fear is heavy and threads caught tight. When Marcus found Lena through a former hospital cleaner, she wept and then said a single, hard word: "Yes." The plan was ridiculous in its simplicity. Marcus would create a diversion, a staged gas leak in the kitchen wing that would pull security away, while Lena slipped Amara out through a service door used for caterers. Zuri would wait in the alley with a small bag and a scarf to cover Amara's hair. Marcus would follow with his camera, ready to document anything. Miss Thelma refused to come, saying she was too old for running. She kissed Zuri's forehead and pressed a rosary into her palm. Night fell like a curtain. The mansion smelled faintly of lemons and wax, a careful clean hiding violence. Ethan's car was gone. His driver had left at dusk for the airport. Lena's hands shook as she opened the service gate from the inside and led Amara down a corridor smelling of starch and perfume. Amara moved slowly, one hand pressed protectively over her belly, her face pale but alert, eyes lit with a cautious hope Zuri had never seen before. They slipped into the alley like ghosts. Zuri's breath came fast. She wrapped the scarf around Amara's head as if folding a fragile bird. Marcus crouched with his phone, whispering, "Stay close, keep moving." They had almost cleared the block when a sharp light sliced the night, headlights swinging around the corner with impossible speed. Ethan's car. He had returned early. The driver slammed the brakes. Ethan stepped out, rain starting again, like the city's own anger. He was smaller up close, less the public persona, more a man with a face carved by control. His voice, calm, dangerous, cut through the alley. "What is this?" he demanded. Security men spilled from a side door, boots pounding. For a moment panic did what panic does best, it froze people. Amara stumbled. Zuri pushed forward without thinking, a child in front of a line of grown men. She put herself between Ethan and Amara like a shield, voice high and steady. "Leave her alone," she said. "Leave her alone." The absurdity of it, a 12-year-old shouting at a billionaire, should have meant nothing. Instead it wrenched something in Ethan. For a sliver of time his face flickered with confusion, then rage. Marcus, thinking fast, started recording. He edged to the light and kept his phone steady, the little red dot of recording swallowing everything: Ethan's words, Amara's small whimper, Zuri's defiant stance. Security lunged. Lena shoved Amara toward the back of a delivery van Marcus had flagged earlier. The van's engine coughed to life. Tires squealed. The world became motion. Shots of rain and tail lights, Marcus sprinting, Zuri's hand clamped around Amara's as the van lurched away, the footage in Marcus's phone catching a sequence of brutality and bravery that would not be easy to bury. Behind them, Ethan screamed orders. Men chased, but the city's night swallowed their shouts. They reached a safe house Marcus had arranged, an old community center with a locked back room and a nurse who owed him a favor. Amara collapsed into a chair, hands trembling, tears tracking down her cheeks but the terror eased by a thin breath of relief. Zuri sat on the floor beside her, still shaking, and whispered, "It's okay. You're okay." Amara looked at the girl, at the scarred hand, at the fierce set of her jaw, and for the first time since the scream, she let herself believe it might be true. Outside, the rain washed the alley clean as if trying to erase the night. But Marcus's phone hummed in his pocket, quietly triumphant. The truth had a witness now. Morning came with gray light seeping through the curtains of the community center's back room. Amara woke slowly, disoriented by safety, the unfamiliar quiet after years of walking on broken glass. Beside her, Zuri slept curled up in a chair, head resting against her knees, a blanket slipping to the floor. The little girl's face was soft in sleep, but even then, determination clung to her expression like sunlight through clouds. Marcus Hale sat nearby, phone in hand, reviewing the footage from the night before. Every detail was there, the confrontation, Ethan's threats, Zuri's trembling defiance, and the moment he lunged forward. It was raw, uncut, impossible to deny. Marcus knew it was dangerous to release. Ethan still had friends in high places, but he also knew that the truth, once seen, could never be unseen. By noon, the footage hit the internet. It spread like fire. People who once praised Ethan Crow now replayed his fury frame by frame. News anchors hesitated before calling it alleged abuse. Activists flooded social media with Amara's name, demanding justice. Police departments that had ignored Zuri's cries scrambled to reopen her complaint. Ethan tried to strike back, claiming the video was edited, but the evidence was too strong, the voices too loud. The world had seen him for what he was. That evening, police cars lined the mansion gates. Cameras flashed as officers led Ethan Crow out in handcuffs, his face blank with disbelief. The same cameras that once adored him now documented his fall. Reporters shouted questions he refused to answer. Somewhere across the city, Zuri watched it all unfold on television, her heart pounding. Miss Thelma hugged her tight, tears sliding down her cheeks. "You did it, baby," she whispered. "You spoke up, and the world listened." But Zuri shook her head. "I didn't do it alone. She was brave too." 2 weeks later, Amara gave birth to a baby boy in a quiet hospital room, healthy, pink, and crying like the sky itself had opened for him. She named him Hope. Marcus visited with flowers. Zuri stood shyly in the doorway until Amara beckoned her closer. "I wanted you to be the first to meet him," Amara said, smiling weakly. "You saved his life before he even took his first breath." Zuri touched the baby's tiny hand, her eyes shining. "He's perfect," she whispered. Amara squeezed her fingers. "So are you." The weeks that followed brought headlines, court hearings, and public outrage. Ethan's empire crumbled under the weight of evidence Marcus uncovered. Employees came forward, former assistants shared their stories, and investors fled. The mask had fallen, and beneath it was nothing but the truth Zuri had refused to ignore. Months later, on a bright spring afternoon, Amara stood on a small stage at a women's shelter opening. Reporters and cameras gathered again. But this time the flashbulbs captured healing instead of fear. She spoke softly into the microphone, her voice steady. I survived because someone believed me, someone the world said was too young, too small, too powerless to make a difference. But that someone saved my life. She looked to her left, where Zuri stood in a simple yellow dress, clutching a worn notebook, her truth journal. The crowd erupted in applause. Zuri's cheeks flushed, but she stepped forward, her voice clear. I didn't know what would happen, she said. I was scared every day. But my grandma says if you know something is wrong and you stay quiet, then you become part of it. I just wanted to do what was right. Her words carried through the crowd, soft yet powerful, sinking into hearts that had forgotten what bravery looked like. Cameras captured the moment, a billionaire's victim reborn, a child who dared to stand against power, and a baby named Hope, cradled between them. Later that night, Zuri wrote in her notebook one last time. Sometimes, courage doesn't roar. Sometimes, it's a whisper that says, do something. She closed it, smiling, as Miss Thelma's voice drifted from the kitchen. The world outside was still broken in many ways, but for once, Zuri believed it could change, one small voice at a time. And that night, the city slept under clear skies, while a little black girl's courage became the story that taught millions how truth, even whispered, can shake the tallest walls.